Hello everyone, how's it going? And yes, so a bit of an introduction about me. I'm Anthony. I'm a solutions architect at Plerion. About 3.5 months into the role, so I'm pretty fresh in. But before that, I was a solutions architect for 3.5 years at AWS. So yeah, there I was a solutions architect for enterprise customers in the manufacturing segment and also software customers. So I made that leap across into cloud security. And a bit about Plerion. We're an Aussie cybersecurity startup with co-founders who are repeat co-founders. So prior, they created a startup called Cloud Conformity, which exited in 2019 to a business called Trend Micro, which a bunch of you might know about. And so it builds upon that foundational CSPM and CNAP platforms, which are a bunch of abbreviations that I've thrown out to you, but it stands for Cloud Security Posture Management and Cloud Native Application Protection Platform. So those are the platforms that check for things like misconfigurations within your cloud environment. And they also scan your workloads for vulnerabilities, surface information about CVEs, and use the public databases for vulnerability data. But where we are now is we're talking about the AI execution era, because you can't go any couple meters around Summit without talking about AI. But we're talking about the era where security teams, CISOs, and say executives are focused on how quickly can we remediate these issues. And in terms of the noise that is being surfaced by these CNAP platforms and CSPM platforms, it's only increasing, especially with the release of, let's say, Mythos or Daybreak. People are talking about these huge floods of vulnerability information and misconfigs that might lead to a breach and the faster breaches that are happening in today's day and age. So security teams, these challenges that security engineers are facing, these are not new. You're seeing alert fatigue, visibility, and risks with using AI. But I'd say this has worsened over time, especially as now attackers are leveraging AI and the best LLMs to craft, let's say, malicious payloads, figure out denial of service attacks and flood attacks. So AI is helping these attackers discover ways into your cloud environment and using it for essentially attacks. So the question is, who is building in the defense category for cloud security, and who is leveraging AI to fix these risks and fix these issues that surface, right? So people talk about something called machine speed of, like, let's say, discovery of these attacks and part of your attack surface. But what about machine speed of remediation? So in 2026, this old model is broken. So it's alert and wait. And there's too much of a time window between findings and their risks and their remediation. And your backlog continues to grow and grow. Your teams are exhausted. Burnout is coming, right? And so we're all about building with the new model for security, where AI doesn't just surface these issues and alert you and help you prioritize, but also help you remediate. So the whole end-to-end workflow of AI native cybersecurity. So this is the platform we aim to cover from code to cloud to AI, because for, let's say, the security vendors that only cover one specific area, let's say cloud, they're missing the shift left notion of the initial templates that are being deployed into your cloud and your runtime. So we cover your cloud in terms of SaaS capabilities for, let's say, your repos. And it doesn't have to be one single repo. We cover things like GitHub, Bitbucket, and all those common tools like GitLab as well. From code to cloud, so cloud and across all your cloud environments, whether that might be AWS, GCP, or Azure. And this is an agentless posture scanning. And then to AI, where we have AI security posture management checks. And we are also using the AI agent layer on top, which is the orchestration layer, to essentially help you with the investigations, the triaging, and the remediation of these issues. So we won't have time enough to go through the entire architecture, but I've pinpointed specifically the agent brain of Pleri. So Pleri is that sophisticated agent that is built on top of AWS services, and it combines large language models through an access layer through, which you guys are probably familiar with. And it also accesses long-term memory through an Aurora Postgres database through a PG vector, and also persists any tasks towards DynamoDB, which is that non-relational database. So that's for any information and data sources that we need to persist. So I show you all of this just to drive home the point that it is not just, let's say, a Claude chat or your AI chatbot, but rather there is many pieces of the puzzle that enable Pleri, the AI security engineer, to be able to remember what tasks you asked her, let's say last week, last month, or 6 months ago, and also, let's say, conduct things like recurring tasks, look into your security data, what has been investigated and triaged before, and what your environment looks like, right? So it's very specific to what your environment has deployed and what the asset and resources landscape looks like. At the bottom there, you can also see we connect into tools as well through integrations. So let's say you're using Slack or Teams for communications. You can have a bidirectional conversation with Pleri through those channels. And as I mentioned earlier, it connects into your repo as well. So all of that to say we work where you work. So you don't have to log into the Plerion dashboard if you don't want to. And you can just keep using your tools that you're familiar with and just access Pleri for your security tasks. Cool. Demo time, since I've been talking for a while, but I will still be talking through this demo. So what you see here is the main interface of Plerion. We're trying to surface your top risks and your attack paths. If we look into the focus here section for your top priorities, we might be surfacing things your publicly exposed database instance, which should definitely not be the case. Let's say that you didn't want an attacker to surface any data sources through querying. We also show things like attack paths. So if I drill down to this Lambda function, we start to see what is the resources involved in this path to get to, let's say, any type of crown jewels or data source. And start to enumerate things like the gate involved, the resources that it has access to, and then might have access to things like your GitHub keys or any other secrets as well. From a vulnerability angle, you can see it's very noisy. You saw a number of around 45,000. You can drill these down and filter out noise by starting to pinpoint on whether the exploit exists, if it's on the known exploitability vulnerability, so a KEV. And then what we're seeing now on the screen is that we're leveraging Pleri to investigate on our behalf that was surfaced in our cloud environment. So we're marrying up basically the NIST NVD information, EPSS scores, and then we're marrying that up with your cloud environment context to determine whether it is actually exploitable in your environment. So this is ClickUpsy and sort of based on one single CVE, but you can see the base severity score of 9.8 went to 0 in terms of operational severity after we determined that the EC2 instance was not running, right? That is only one example, but another example might be not actually reachable through the network, or let's say a combination of your network ACLs or your security groups, that will also be surfaced for you. Usually this is the work that would be done by a security engineer manually, but we're offloading this to Pleri. The example on screen now, you can see we're going to get Pleri to focus on the latter half of the workflow, where not only does she investigate, she also triages and creates Jira tickets. So this is another manual task that you can offload to Pleri. You can ask her a specific structure on how you'd like your Jira tickets to be created, and you can tailor this to your organization. Let's say your engineers are very familiar with a certain structure. You want to highlight things like the likelihood and severity to tell them why exactly are we prioritizing this as a task first, right? So the most value you can get is by starting to tailor these responses to your organization and what your teams are used to, and she will create for you the Jira ticket, and you can see here the example of what she's created. So she's come up with affected assets, exploitability verdict, what are the affected packages and which vulnerability patches we need to apply, and it's been created by Pleri. She can also assign this to the engineer as well. Let's say that the asset is a Lambda function code that needs to be remediated and updated. She can infer that the owner of this is whoever deployed it, or let's say the owner tag is Anthony, myself. She'll infer that the ticket should be assigned to me, assign that accordingly. Also, if you download the Chrome extension to Pleri, this is the same as a narrative of work you work. You can to this page context and send it through to Pleri so that she can edit on the fly any of these Jira ticket information. So yes, you need to just use the dashboard. The next step, I'm asked to create an auto-fix PR for this specific issue. She might come up with whether it exists or not, or how to conduct this remediation. But yes, once you've set up an integration into the code repo, she can create automated fix PRs directly to your repo, let's say at an infrastructure as code level, and it would look like this. Let's say that I'm using GitHub as a repo, she'll create the auto fix PR, but it still will require the human in the loop at the end to approve of the changes, right? She won't just make the change unless you actually want her to. Finally, the last part of this is, you saw this was very text-driven and click-driven. You can create this automatically as a workflow task that runs on a recurring basis. So lastly, I'm using Pleri herself to create exploitability analysis and create it on a reoccurring basis, which is the last thing I'm writing. So let's say every single week on Monday, I would like her to conduct this exploitability analysis, also create for me and look into the top issues that are plaguing my environment, and surface this to me through Slack, or conduct this investigation and come up with the ones that I should work on first, if I only had, let's say, 2 to 3 hours to work on it for this week. She might be asking me next a couple clarifying informations and questions. And you can see here, she also creates a plan for her to follow as well. So yes, it all goes through this whole process of coming up with a plan of tasks, things to follow, and each of these tasks fire off a Lambda function that completes each task. As you know, Lambda functions only run for about 15 minutes, so we split up each task, complete them sometimes concurrently, sometimes just subsequently. Finishing off this task, I've just asked her, yes, just use the defaults for a lot of these questions that she's asking for. And she's the task for us. So what we're seeing is the Pleri dashboard, but finally we'll click on the task section, which you can see in the top left. Obviously we're giving it a bit of time to run. Cool, it's completed. Yep. So she's completed it now on the Monday recurring basis, and you'll see the task there in the top left as I showed. But yeah, there you go. So you can use Pleri to go through the whole workflow end to end, and you can also get her to create those recurring tasks. Awesome. So pretty much to wrap things off, we are aiming to make life easier for you in the security engineering space. And depending on those workflows that you just saw and those tasks that get completed on a recurring basis, you also have access to something called a ROI dashboard, which shows you roughly an estimation of how many hours or days you've saved in a year by offloading all these manual security tasks and investigations to Pleri. And yeah, if you're keen to learn more and talk more about your current security tooling and where Pleri and Plerion can help you improve your security posture, come to the 11. We also have a Planner cafe or restaurant downstairs outside of Summit, so come chat to us there. But thank you, everyone.